Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm talking about my favorite things from the third quarter of 2022. I almost said 2021. Apparently I don't know what year it is. Anyway, if you have not seen one of these videos before, I talk about my favorite things and also my favorite books of the quarter. I like to include those, and I used to do videos that were just my favorite books of the quarter, but I don't do that anymore. Now I also add in like some of my other favorite things too, because it's just fun to talk about it and get recommendations from you guys as well. And it's almost like a digital scrapbook of things that I have really enjoyed. Okay, so let's start out with like food and beverages. I'm gonna specifically start with beverages. So I don't have any of it left, but I have to talk about it because I love it so much. Went to Trader Joe's and got maple coffee, and it is like my favorite coffee maybe of all time now. Like, I love peppermint mocha coffee around Christmas time, and I usually love pumpkin spice in the fall, but this maple coffee like blew pumpkin spice out of the water. Like, it was like the best coffee ever. And I really wish I had bought more than one bag, because now I'm out and I'm wondering if the next time I go to Trader Joe's, because we don't have one close to us, like the closest one is like 2 hours away. So I'm wondering if the next time that I go, if they'll even have any more, because I really want more. Speaking of Trader Joe's, I know that this is super basic because lots of other people love this. This is my first year trying this type of tea, the Harvest Blend herbal tea. Like, if you haven't tried this, you need to. Like, it smells so good. And one of my friends doesn't have a Trader Joe's near her either, and she says that she orders these on Amazon, which I didn't realize that you could do. I looked, and Amazon did have the maple coffee as well, but it was like twice the price of Trader Joe's. So I'm not about that life. I will not do that. But I think that this is closer to the actual in-store price. But I picked up several boxes of these because people had recommended it to me, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's amazing. I can smell it just holding it, and it's so good. And then it's kind of funny. So last year for my birthday, my friend Dia sent me some books, and she also sent me a bag of whole bean coffee. And since she sent that to us, we loved it so much that we have continued to buy that coffee as our whole bean coffee, like pretty much exclusively. And we love it so much. So this year for my birthday, Dia sent me some books, and she put like some like miscellaneous tea bags from Republic of Tea, which I'd never tried their tea before. And one of them was pumpkin spice tea. And I used the rest of my birthday money to buy books, but also I had to get some because this tea is unbelievable. Like, my daughter does not like tea, and she smelled it and she was like, oh my gosh, that tea is the best smelling tea ever. I'm like, yes it is. So 2 years in a row now, Dia has purchased something for me for my birthday, sent it to me, and I had to keep getting it because I love it so much. All right, moving on to regular food. I actually don't really have like ethnic food recommendations for you. Like, the last few months I have been super into Korean food and making a lot of that at home, and I do still make it sometimes, but I've kind of been very busy, and so I've been going with things that are super easy to make. So one of our go-to recipes, and it is Claire's favorite meal like of all time now, and I've made it for several of her friends who came over, and both of them were self-proclaimed extremely picky eaters, and they both loved it. So that made me feel awesome. Anyways, it's a really simple one pot chicken and rice meal. So it's got like a spice mix that you put together. You coat the chicken in it, you brown the chicken, and then you put like, you toast the rice, and then you put like broth in there, and then put the chicken back on top and just like let it cook for like 20 minutes. It's like the easiest thing ever, but the spices in it are really amazing. I'll link the recipe down below so you can try it, because it's super easy, super fast for like a weeknight, and it's just so delicious. The only thing that I change for it is that it does call for paprika, and I use smoked paprika instead of regular paprika. But other than that, I keep everything else the same, and It's so delicious, you guys, and so easy. I usually serve it with like some roasted broccoli, and it's like the perfect meal. I love it. I've also been like super into mug cakes lately because I can make just like a little bit of dessert and not have like a ton of dessert sitting around. So I have really been enjoying this apple cinnamon mug cake, and it's so delicious. I love it. I do make some substitutions because I can't have dairy. I'm sure that the recipe is great as is, but I use like non-dairy milk, and I use oil instead of butter, and then I use coconut sugar instead of regular sugar. And I've used it with both white flour and spelt flour, and both of those are really good. So I'm thinking you could probably use some sort of gluten-free flour as well if you needed to, but it's like the perfect fall treat, and it's not me having like an entire pan of apple cake, because if I had an entire pan of it, I would eat an entire pan of it. So this is a good compromise. All right, let's move on to entertainment. I guess we can start with music. My main listens have been worship music and K-pop, which I guess is not all that different than normal. So my favorite worship songs lately has been Cody Carnes' song. I think it's called He Won't, or He Won't Fail, something like that. I think that's a pretty popular one. So a lot of people have heard it, but it's been a very like soothing and staying song in the season of life that I'm in, because there's been a lot of crazy things happening, especially like with my health and stuff. So that has just been a really good reminder to me of the Lord's faithfulness during those times. And then I've also been listening to, I'm trying to remember her married name. It was Lindy Conant, and I think it might be Lindy Kofer, but if it's something different, I'll put it here. But she's been kind of like around for a while, and she was part of some sort of like youth organization on college campuses for like missions and stuff. But I can't remember what that's called either, because I didn't do that much research into it. Anyway, she has a newer album, and there's a song that I think it's called Christ and Christ Crucified, and it's just unbelievable. The whole album is just like very glorifying to God rather than just like focusing on yourself, because a lot of worship songs kind of do that sometimes, which does not help me feel better about the situation that I'm in. Focusing on God does. So I like songs that are like that. So I've really been enjoying that worship album a lot. And then K-pop. I mean, kind of been listening to the usual, but I've been listening to a lot more of Twice lately. They are just so fun. And they had come out with a Japanese album pretty recently, and we were enjoying that and listening to that. And for some reason, right after they dropped their Japanese album, they dropped a Korean album, and I didn't know about it for like several weeks. And then Christy was talking about a song that she loved from it, and I was like, wait, they came out with another album? And so thank goodness for Christy, because she told me about it. And that album is like on repeat at our house, especially Queen of Hearts, which actually is entirely in English. It's their second like fully English song, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's so fun. I feel like anyone would like it, probably. Maybe not. I guess I can't say that for anything. That is something that everyone would love, but it's just a really good song. I also mentioned in, I think maybe it was my September wrap-up video, my daughter got a Switch in August, and so I spent a lot more time playing the Switch than I did reading last month. And a few of you asked me in the comments like what games I have been playing. So I have not been playing anything that is really like revolutionary. They're just new to me because we haven't had any game system for quite a long time. And so since this is like our first Switch and stuff, these games are new to me, but they're not new to other people. The first one of those is Animal Crossing New Horizons. And this is like a go-to relaxing game to me because it's just like sweet and fun, and you're just building up your island and decorating your house and talking to the animals on the island, and that's just cute and wholesome, and it's a very relaxing game. Less relaxing, but probably more fun is Zelda's Breath of the Wild, and this game is quite possibly one of the most, if not the most popular Zelda game, because it just blew up in popularity. They kind of like broke the mold a little bit of like what they did with Zelda games and creating a completely like open world concept for Zelda. And I'd never really played an open world game before. And so it's very interesting. And there's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of like just doing stuff just to see if you can do it. And you probably can. And there is like a linear storyline that you can follow, but there's so many side quests and other things that you can do and things that you can explore that have like nothing to do with the story. And it's just really fun. I can see this being one of those games where people spend hundreds of hours on it because there is like so much to do just beyond the main storyline. For those of you who have played Breath of the Wild and are wondering where I am in it, I have beaten all 4 divine beasts. So the last thing that I have to do is actually go to the castle and fight Ganon, but I am trying to complete more shrines and get like my hearts and stamina up first. This is totally gibberish for those of you who don't play Breath of the Wild. So I'm sorry, I'm moving on now. I will have timestamps in the description, so that will hopefully help people skip around for things that they're not interested in. But yes, been super enjoying the Switch. I have not been watching a ton of TV, but I did finish a couple of K-dramas this past quarter, one of which I really loved, and the other one I enjoyed, but the ending kind of ruined it for me. And it wouldn't have been my favorite anyway, I don't think. But the ending kind of made it tank a little bit for me. So the one that I loved, because this is a favorites video, so I don't really need to talk about the other one. The one that I loved was Run On. And I started watching this one with my husband like a while ago. And we usually do like Sunday night date nights where we'll cook like a special meal and we'll watch a K-drama or like something else. We've watched some like Victorian adaptations and different things, other TV shows or movies. And we just do that and like eat our food. So we kind of had to put a pause on that for a while because my husband had like a really serious injury and then some other health issues and other things that were happening. And then all the times that we were out of town. So it took us forever to finish the show, but it was so good. It's about this guy who his dad, I think, is like the equivalent, I think, of a congressman. He's called an assemblyman. And then his mom is an actress, so he's very famous, very in the limelight. And he is also like a famous runner and athlete. And his sister is like a famous golfer. And so he ends up meeting this girl who is a translator. So she translates his Korean into English for different like TV interviews and that kind of stuff. And so it's very interesting. There's a lot of dynamics that are going on there. And I do feel like some of the things were culturally like a bit lost on me, especially some of the ways that like their sports culture is different than the United States. And some of their relationship stuff is also very different. Like there were times where the girl would get upset because he was doing this or he wasn't doing that. And to me as an American, it didn't seem like that big of a deal. But obviously it is a big deal in Korea and there's different relationship nuances there. But it was an excellent show. Okay, let's go ahead and move into books. If I counted correctly, I think I read 28 separate things in the third quarter. And there are some short stories that are included in that. I think there's like maybe 3 short stories that I read separately and also a few manga. And while I loved 2 of the short stories that I read, I'm not going to include them in favorite books because they don't feel like overall books. I was actually kind of surprised when I looked back because I saw that there was like not a ton of 5-star books, and some of the ones that were, I have a couple months space from them, and I don't feel like I really want to say that they're like my favorite of the quarter because I don't think that they were. So I actually have 4 books here, and actually one of the 4 is actually a manga series that I'm just going to talk about as a whole because I've read 5 books in that series and I think I rated all of them 5 stars. And that series is Spy Family, which if you've been watching my channel, you know that I really have been enjoying Spy Family. My library only has volumes 1 through 5, but maybe they'll order the rest of them for me because I was the one who requested them to order Spy Family and they listened to me and ordered it, and it's just amazing. I've just really enjoyed this series, and I feel like I don't really have a lot to say about it because It's making the rounds on BookTube. It's pretty popular. It was popular before, and now it's being turned into, or is turned into, an anime show at this point. So that's just only increased its popularity. So I feel like most people kind of know the general plot, but if you don't, a very brief synopsis is that the main character is a spy, and he has to kind of have a fake family for the mission that he's going on. So he ends up marrying a woman who's an assassin, but he doesn't know she's an assassin. She doesn't know he's a spy. And the daughter that they adopt is a telepath, and they don't know she's a telepath. So she knows exactly what they're up to, but they have no clue that she knows. And it's really, really funny. The family dynamic is absolutely adorable. And later in the series, I think it's either book 3 or book 4, they adopt a dog. And that dog is the cutest thing, and he is so much fun. Okay, moving on. Another book that I'm really not surprised made this list is The Lord God Made Them All by James Herriot. I think this is book 4 out of his series of books. The first one being All Creatures Great and Small, and then I think it's All Things Bright and Beautiful, All Things Wise and Wonderful, The Lord God Made Them All, and then I think book 5 is Every Living Thing. So I am nearing the end of my James Herriot books, which, I mean, they'll get reread, but there's something special about reading them for the first time. So I've been spacing them out and trying to read only one of them a year so I can kind of make them last just a little bit longer. But my gracious, I just love them so much. Like, they are my ultimate comfort read. I just adore them. It's about a country vet who practices in England. He's traveled there from Scotland, and just him getting used to small town life. And there's lots of beautiful descriptions of the English countryside, lots of kind of detailed proceedings of veterinary practice as well, which I find really interesting, so I like that. But there may be some people that might get a little grossed out by that, so just know that that's there. But I would not say that that's like the predominant feature of the book. I think that much more it focuses on his relationship with the people that he's getting to know and small town dynamics, and I feel like it's much more about that kind of a thing. But the veterinary stuff does take a fairly prominent role in some of the stories, because each chapter is kind of like an isolated story in a sense, but they do all kind of connect. I would say that The Lord God Made Them All is probably my least favorite of the series so far, but it still very easily got 5 stars and was absolutely just such a joy to read. So I said that I wasn't going to include the short stories that I read on this list, but I am going to include this because it is a short story collection that I read the entirety of, and that's A Bad Business by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This short story collection had, I believe, 6 short stories in it, and I read it with some friends, and we had like a live about it and had some chatting on the literary discourse Discord, and all of that just only increased my enjoyment. But I absolutely loved these short stories. Some of them were absolutely hilarious. Some of them made me cry. So it ran the entire like spectrum of different stories and different settings, and I just love how Dostoevsky writes. I love how he examines human nature and kind of more deep philosophical questions in the way that he does. The way that he explores it is just so meaningful, and it's not like this super abstract thing. It's just kind of like, here's a thought, here's a belief, here's this, and here's how it actually plays out in this person's life and influences who they are. And it's just, I don't know, I just love his writing. He is one of my favorite writers of all time, and I had pretty high expectations going into reading A Bad Business, and it delivered on every single one of those and more. So if you have been interested in reading Russian literature, but you don't know where to start, or you feel intimidated, this short story collection is an absolutely wonderful place to start. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And I'm not going to say a ton about this because I did have an entire spoilery reading vlog that I did while I was reading this book. So I'll link that in case that you didn't see it, because I talk about all my thoughts going into it and all my thoughts as I'm reading it in that vlog. I was actually really intimidated to read this book. I had read some Brandon Sanderson. I had read the entire First Era Mistborn trilogy and also read several of the Skyward books. I still haven't read book 3, but I did read book 1 and 2 and really enjoyed that. So I had read Sanderson. I knew I liked his writing style and the way that he approached fantasy made it very accessible for someone who was more of a high fantasy newbie. So I really, really enjoyed this book. It was a lot, honestly. It was a lot more in depth than Mistborn, and there was just a lot. There's a lot of characters. There's like a whole world that is happening there. So you have different races, different religions, different political systems, and we're exploring each of those different magic systems. It's not even just like one type of magic. It's multiple types of magic. And it's really interesting because I feel like for a good chunk of the book, I was like, I have no clue what's going on. And even towards the end, I was still like, I still kind of don't know a lot of what's going on. There's still a lot left to explore, but you don't feel like so lost and confused that you can't figure out anything. So it's such an intricate world and it makes it really, really interesting. And I feel like my summer was like a summer of fantasy for someone who doesn't read a lot of fantasy. I started like 3 fantasy series over the summer and really enjoyed all of them. But by far, I would say my favorite was Way of Kings, and I just bought Words of Radiance. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. Maybe I'll read it before the end of the year. I'm not sure. My reading months are already very scheduled out for the rest of the year. But if I can squeeze it in, then I definitely will. Well, there you have it. There's all my favorite things from the third quarter of 2022. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. What are some things that you have just really, really loved in the last few months? Whether that be books or TV shows or food or drinks or even places that you have gone that have been really special or whatever. I would just love to hear from you and love to hear what are some things that have just been wonderful favorite things for you. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again.